You're on episode 24 of the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast. We're going to focus now on the situation at bottom club Bray Wanderers. I was at their game on Friday, beaten 6-0 by Bohemians in Dalymount Park under caretaker manager Graham Kelly, who joined us now on Skype. Graham, how are you?
Hiya Jamie, how are you?
Great, thanks Graham. Cheers for having a chat with us.
No problem.
I suppose first things first, how are you the caretaker manager again? Because you were in caretaker charge for 60 games. Martin Russell then came in as manager. He resigned last week and the FAI have allowed you to become caretaker manager again as such, which isn't overly common in the league. Normally, once you've done a 6-month stint, you can go again, but they've obviously allowed you to do that.
Yeah, it's 60 days, as you say, but the plan is that hopefully I can get onto the pro licence. I think applications will open early next week. And I know from speaking to the owner here, and he was onto the FAI, and they've given a special compensation that I could go back in for another 60 days if need be, with a view to getting on the pro licence, hopefully.
Very good. So it's fair to say, not the best start to your second stint as manager, although I know you were still on the coaching staff as assistant manager to Martin Russell. 6-0 against Bohs, 1-0 down very early in the game after a mistake by Rhys Gorman. And if we're honest, Graham, bar your keeper Evan Moore, and it probably could have been 10-0 given the amount of chances they had. They also missed a penalty. I think there were some words had between members of the Bohs board and management and players, both at half time and full time in public view outside the away dressing room. Team are currently 6 adrift at the bottom, so not the ideal start to the match, I suppose, and the night overall.
No, you're right. Look, it's one that we have to write off. It was a bad night all round, obviously preparation wasn't good with the guys haven't trained since it was effectively 3 weeks, really. I know they done a little bit last week with the PFAI, but from the coaching staff here, we had no physical contact with the players since they played Sligo, and although we got the win that day, again, preparations haven't been good last week, and I think, the fitness levels definitely showed as that game went on. As you say, Evan pulled off some really good saves in the game, and just as a group, we've got together after it. We've trained really well this week. We've got an extra night's training in as well with the lads. They've came in, they've worked hard, and we just have to put it behind us, Jamie. It was a bad night, and we put it behind us, and we prepared as best we can for Cork this Friday.
Yeah, of course, you probably couldn't have wished for a more difficult game, apart from maybe if you were going to face Dundalk, to face Cork City at the Carlisle Ground, which we'll speak about in a minute. Just a match on Friday night, the game is over by half time. Is it a case of trying to limit the score in the second half? And what was the mood like among the players, both at half time and full time, given the match, given the couple of weeks that had led to that, and given that as they were coming in about half time and full time, they could hear, members of the hierarchy in the club having a go at people?
Yeah, look, it was tough. Giving away the goal so early obviously set the tone for Bohs, and Bohs were really good on the night and very clinical, in fairness to them, but we knew going into the game we had to try and get through that first 20-minute period, which was going to be fast paced to the game, and we didn't, and we ended up, it was nearly 3-0 after 20 minutes. So at half time we had said, look, obviously we need to go out here second half, we need to start proving to ourselves that we need to compete in the game, we need to just get things right and start. Like, we gave away some really, really sloppy goals, but look, it's part of what happens when you lose that little bit of sharpness. I'm sure Eoin, who's there with you, can tell you, if you don't train for 3 weeks, the sharpness goes. And when you're playing a team that, are very well organised, they pace up top, they create an awful lot of chances on the night, it's very tough to play against. And as I say earlier, it's just one we have to write off, Jamie.
Yeah, first time in a couple of weeks that you've been able to have the players on the training pitch, and you mentioned they've come in for an extra night. We're chatting on Wednesday. I'm not sure if you'll train on Thursday before the Cork match, but how have the players been this week? And of course, we're waiting for Friday to see if their wages for this month arrive. Their wages for last month arrived very late, and the club, the FAI and everybody, the PFAI, have said they don't expect any issues for the players to be paid on Friday morning for this month in order to play the game against Cork City. Of course, they were coming off the back of Hammer and Derry City as well after their Champions League defeat.
Yeah, look, the guys, they train really well. I've always said all along that they're a good bunch of lads. We've experience there, and we've a lot of good young kids in there. The squad is really light. I think there's 14 senior players that are fit, and the rest are kids made up from the 17s and the 19s. So we've trained really well. We'll train again tomorrow night before Cork. Obviously a light enough session. And look, we know we're in for a really, really tough game on Friday night. Obviously Cork, really good win on Monday, but apart from that, they've beaten us comfortably twice this season already, so we have to prepare as best we can and hopefully get something from the game.
Yeah, Graham, I spoke to the former manager Martin Russell on Friday, and I know you heard the interview on there. That's what I call Sport on 98FM on Sunday. If people haven't, it's on both the Off the Ball and 98fm.com websites. Just find the podcast section. And he said he wasn't happy that the players train with the PFAI. Now that's gone now because they're clearly back with you, but his other reason was that the FAI wouldn't allow Bray to sign any players from other clubs, even if they've come in on loan or were to come in on a free transfer for free. And that's an issue now that you're going to face as well. You mentioned there's 14 senior players, lots of younger players in the squad. You now are not going to be able to sign, as far as I'm aware, unless the FAI change their stance, aren't going to be able to sign anybody. So with 10 games left, 6 points adrift, you're going to face, trying to stay up and claw back that gap with the squad that you have effectively.
Yeah, that's it. We actually just said that after the game on last Friday night. There was 20 people in that room, and that's it. That's what we have for the rest of the season, bar we bring up any more players from the 17s or 19s. It is light. It is going to be tough to keep everybody fit. You're obviously putting a lot of demand on them players to play week in, week out at a very high level. But it is what it is. There's the transfer embargo's in place, and we just have to get on with it. In one way, it's good experience for the kids, obviously depending on what type of game you throw them into, but lads will now get the opportunity to play first team football, and there's lads as young as 16 in the squad, so that can only benefit them in the future.
Yeah, for you, Graham, simple question, given the way things are at the moment, and I know you mentioned about the pro licence and so on and so forth, but it's a huge task in a very difficult environment currently. Why take the job again?
It's a good question. It's probably for the experience, Jamie. I think I said to you last time we did a podcast, I enjoy being around the club. I'm here a long time. I enjoy working with the players that are here at the moment. They're a really good bunch of players. So it's going to be tough, but it is only 6 points, like you've said. And we've got to look at, can we catch Limerick? It's obviously going to be difficult, but we have to just try our best.
Yeah, of course, and a huge couple of weeks ahead, as you mentioned, after this game against Cork, some matches that you simply have to win. But if you do pick up 3 points, and even this weekend, if you happen to be Cork and Limerick were to lose, it's down to 3 with 9 games. And I would assume even if there's only 3 or 4 games left and you can keep yourselves within a win of being close enough to put them under big pressure, that's job done, even going into maybe the last 2 games.
Yeah, look, that's effectively it. With the 6 points in it, out of the 10 games that are left, I think we've 6 at home, and if anything, our home record has been good and our home form has been good, so we're hoping we can pick up points, and Limerick still have to come to us as well, so we're hoping obviously the gap doesn't grow between ourselves and Limerick, and we can pick up points, and when they come to us, hopefully put a bit more pressure on them.
Yeah, of course. Next game after Cork, Graham, I'm sure you've seen the fixture list is against Dundalk, if that game happens with Europe as well. So that's one to keep an eye on. You then play Shamrock Rovers, and you then play against Waterford. So you've actually, your first, 4 of your first 5 games in charge are against the top 4. But as you said, you're then playing Limerick and, other teams around you where you'll be really hopeful to try and pick up some
I think next week after Cork, it's actually Pats away, if I'm right, Jamie. And then we've the Cup, and then we've Dundalk and Rovers at home. So look, it's not easy. There's no easy games in the division anyway, but we just have to hope we can pick up a couple of points somewhere along the way. Yeah,
Pat's away on August 3rd. If I could look at live score properly, I would have known that. So, Graham, apologies. Lastly, I know we spoke earlier on in the day when I was organising you to come on the podcast, and about a month ago I spent a day with you out in Bray doing our Suicide or Survive special in a heated altitude chamber. It's a cycle for charity, and the temperatures are unbelievably hot. There's no oxygen in the room. Now, you finished that challenge. I'm still here, thankfully, and I'm actually able to exercise again after my legs being so sore. But I know we spoke to a number of players. We spoke to Aaron Green, we spoke to Tim Clancy, Ciara Marty Waters. The list goes on of the players that joined us, Graham. And I know the charity got a lot of phone calls off the back of us talking to footballers, which is great, and the point of what you're doing.
Yeah, and a big thanks to yourself, Jamie, for that, and all the lads that came out that day, because the profile that went out was fantastic, and I think the gym itself, Supreme Altitude in Bray, they raised just over 7,500 for the charity, which was phenomenal. But when the charity came in, Caroline from Suicide Survive actually said to me that when we done the Off the Ball podcast that day and we done the video, they got numerous amount of phone calls from people saying, look, if footballers like Aaron Green and Tim Clancy can talk, Marty Waters, then I want to talk. And that's what it's all about. It was about getting the word out there. Get the word. If you're feeling any way down, there is people there to help you. And again, thanks, Jamie, for what you've done for us for that.
Well, no, Graham, thank you for coming up with the idea as well. Fantastic stuff. That's the Bray Caretaker manager, Graham Kelly, having a chat with us in a big week for the club ahead of hosting Cork City at the Carlisle grounds this Friday at 7:45. And you know, the club Bray, of course, do need support, and if you are a football fan or a League of Ireland fan, get to the Carlisle grounds and lend your support. Even if you don't agree with how the club is being run and the people running the club, the players and the coaching staff, and Graham, as you just heard, they're doing their very best to try and keep a very famous football club in the Premier League. Graham, thanks a million, best of luck.
Thank you, Jamie, appreciate it. Thanks, all the best on.
You're on episode 24 of the Off The Ball League of Ireland podcast. It's Jamie Moore here in Off The Ball Towers here in Dublin. We're going to move from the club bottom of the table in Bray Wanderers to the club who were second bottom, and welcome into the studio in just a second Limerick midfielder Eoin Wearen. And it's been an interesting time for Limerick as well. Their players were owed money. Their money for June has been paid late, and their money for July is due on the first Friday of next month, which is the first Friday in August. I understand that's due to, you know, the players waiting for some bonuses on the last Friday of the month, so on and so forth. Anyway, they've been paid up to date, but they are due some money in a few days' time. And Eoin is here in studio. Eoin, how are you?
Not too bad, Jamie. How are you?
Thanks very much for coming in.
No problem.
You've gone for the hairband? Or the bobbin, or what's the story?
Now, yeah.
Very nice.
Mixing it up.
It's something I spoke to Lee Stacey, one of the League of Ireland's best goalkeepers for Shelburne recently, about wearing a hairband to keep the hair out the eyes, and you're going for the growth on top, so you need to keep it manageable.
Yeah, that was it's something I've been growing since February now, so I've got to the stage now where I need to tie it up, and you know, especially playing centre back at the moment, the hair in the eyes heading the ball isn't great. Yeah, we'll speak about your new position just shortly, but let's focus on a serious note for now. What's the latest on Limerick? I've mentioned about the issues that the money's being paid up to date, money due next week. You know, what's time been? You know, recent times been like with no wages, players not training, and the possibility of talks to go on strike, like Bray, you know, eventually didn't do but had voted to do. Yeah, no, it's obviously been an interesting couple of weeks at the club, and you know, it's been difficult for the whole group as players in terms of how to approach it and what way to go about it, I suppose. And you know, one thing that we've had to do is, as a group of players, is stick together, and I think that's what we've done. Yeah, just explain to me what the recent couple of weeks has been like when, you know, we spoke to Graham Kelly about players not training with Bray. I know it was the same with Limerick, and there was, I understand, some meetings involving Stephen McGuinness from the PFAI and, you know, Pat O'Sullivan, the chairman, and others in Limerick, and I believe they were quite volatile. Yeah, no, listen, I suppose as players we weren't in most of the ones where it's been where the problems have been caused, and you know, where the relationships have broken down. As players, we've still got a good relationship with the club, with the management, with the staff. We've also, as well known, we've been working closely with the PFAI and have a good relationship with Ollie Cottle and Stephen McGuinness, and we'd like to thank them for what they've done over the last couple of weeks and the guidance they've given us. And you know, I think we've been given good advice, and what we've done now is hopefully going to benefit us going forward, and also the team. Yeah, just explain to me how that works with, you know, in a period when there's a dispute between the players and the club over money, and the PFAI and maybe SIP2 have to get involved and help you, because I know Steve McGuinness and Ollie Call have taken a bit of a hammering from Fran Gavin and others in the FAI about their role in these situations, and you know, Fran feels that maybe they shouldn't have involved possible strike action, but for you guys, you found them a big help. Yeah, I think it got to a stage for us as a group. Well, in-house we spoke about it, senior players spoke about it, and we thought it was the best route for us to take in terms of preventing things going, you know, I suppose, getting any worse, and you know, protecting ourselves as a group of players, and the PFA have certainly helped us with that. So you mentioned that they've helped. In what ways can they help? Because I would think when you're in this situation, you're a football player, and you know, I know, listening to Stephen McGuinness recently, he was saying that at that time Brendan Clark was the rep in Limerick for the PFAI, but he's now since left and signed for Pats. You'll be one of the senior players in the group, so how does it work when you have to call them in and have to speak to them and have to go, we need your help here because we're owed a lot of money? Yeah, no, obviously it's something that personally I can only speak of it, that I've never been through it before, and you know, so you don't really know what the best approach is to take, and I suppose you're listening to people like Clarkey and Billy Denny and that have been around the league, and maybe these issues have arisen before, but it wasn't an easy decision for us to take, because we knew once we got the PFAI involved, things could get a little bit tricky, and you know, the club might not be happy, and obviously that's proven to be the case, but we'd like to think most of, well, the worst is behind us anyway. Yeah, and as you said, the worst is behind you. When you're waiting for the money and you're maybe told, you know, the money's going to come, or it's going to be here this day or that day or the other day, are you physically sitting there on your Banking 365 app going, is the money coming in? I suppose, again, I can only speak for myself, and I've got no kids, I've got no mortgage at the moment, you know, so there's obviously other players out there where it might be a bigger issue for, and it's obviously been a bigger problem, but I think that's where the group comes into it. You know, if one person needs the money more than others, you know, you have to be prepared to fight for the very last person. It's not just a case of, you know, you look at yourself and I'm grand, I'm sorted, I have nothing to worry about. You have to look at the group as a whole, and that's what we've done, and that's how we've got where we are at the moment.
Yeah, speaking of the group as a whole, it's a smaller group now than it was a couple of weeks ago, very similar to Bray in that a number of the senior players, top earners, have left the club. Why have you not left? Have you opted to leave, or do you want to stay and fight for the Limerick cause? Because I know you've enjoyed your time there up until the recent issues.
It's a tough question, I suppose. There has been interest, but I suppose the biggest thing for me at this stage is playing games. There's only 10 games left to go in the season, and after the year I had last year of missing a whole season, when I've been fit this year, I've played every game, and to me that's the most important thing. I've been back out on the pitch, and I still feel like I have a job to do at Limerick in terms of helping them stay in the league. So.
Yeah, at this time, and we're going to speak later in the podcast to people from Dundalk about their European run, and we've seen Shamrock Rovers had a draw away in Sweden, could have gone through. Derry City had a win away and lost on the aggregate rule, and Cork City were knocked out but will be playing in the third round of the Europa League qualifiers. For you, looking at the other side of things and the problems, does it make you a little bit jealous or envious looking at the clubs at the top end doing so well when clearly there's huge issues at Limerick and Bray?
I think as a player, obviously you want to test yourself against the best, and I think the boys that are playing in those games obviously know they're lucky to be playing in those games because they don't come around often, and obviously I am from a point of view envious, but at the same time we've got our own issues, we've got our own targets and our own goals as a team now at Limerick, and I think we just need to focus on that at the moment. Yeah,
I think it shows definitely the gulf in the league, and we've now got a league of 10 teams. We've got the top 4 including Shamrock Rovers, Waterford, Cork, Dundalk. We've got 5th place Derry City, new stadium in the Brandywell in Europe this year. St Pat's, and we mentioned their stadium issues at the minute, but in mid-table you've got Bohs talking about increasing attendances and lots of good things going on in the community, and then you've got Sligo releasing their statement, which was fantastic, about going so long without a home game, and then you've got Limerick and Bray, which it shows the real split in the league, doesn't it? There's a top 4 or 5, there's a middle crew, and then at the minute there's a bottom 2 or 3 that are struggling.
Yeah, unfortunately that's the case, Jamie, because you look at it, if it's a 10-team league, you want it to be as competitive as possible, but if things keep going the way they are, that gulf's going to just keep getting bigger and bigger, with the money that those sides that you mentioned up at the top of the table are going to be getting, and absolute credit to them for doing fantastically well, qualifying for these competitions and then going forward in them, and obviously winning leagues and cups. But for teams like ourselves now at the bottom of the league, it's just going to become an even bigger challenge year on year, and obviously they're going to be clamping down on things like licensing and stuff with how things have been over the last few weeks, and things are only going to get more difficult, I feel, for the teams at the bottom end. Yeah,
I understand there might be a meeting over the next couple of days between the PFAI and the FAI with Fran Gavin and people from the licensing area of the league to try and alleviate these problems coming in future. Let's talk about the football. Last 2 games for Limerick, both narrow defeats. You lost 2-1 in Inchicore on Friday to St Pat's. You lost 2-1 against Derry the previous weekend, and you're 6 ahead of Bray in the automatic relegation position, but now 5 behind Sligo, who are in 8th, which is safety, of course. They do also have a game in hand, so at the moment it's looking like the playoffs, but I know, as Graham Kelly said there, he's confident of catching you guys. You've got to be confident of trying to catch Sligo.
Yeah, I think anybody that's seen us play over the last couple of weeks, I've seen that the performances have been good. The group are still very much together. There's still a lot of quality in the team. There's some very, very good young players at the club, and we really just haven't had any luck at all. And I know that, as the saying goes, you make your own luck on that, but over the last few weeks there's been a couple of results that haven't gone our way, where we feel that we definitely should have at least taken a point from, if not won the game.
Tell me about your new position at centre-back, and you mentioned trying to keep the hair out of the eyes, but given senior players have left the club and more could leave, you have been asked to play in a position that wouldn't be too familiar to you.
Yeah, well, I suppose the last time I played there before this year was about 5 or 6 years ago, in my last year at West Ham, and I hadn't thought much about playing there again, but it was actually a decision that was made when we had a full strength squad, and in terms of trying to get, I spoke with Tommy, and it was about trying to get all the best players in the team, I suppose, at the same time, and I was actually forced into playing there. I had to play there at half time against Cork City when Darren Dennehy went off at half time, and I'd done well in that game, and things were sort of carried on from there afterwards.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the manager, and we spoke to Tommy Bard a few weeks ago. He came on, and he's recently just passed his pro licence, so congratulations to Tommy on that. His first job as a manager, he's a young manager, he's been in Limerick for a long time as well. How's he handled the whole thing? Because, again, from speaking to Martin Russell and to Graham Kelly, not an ideal gig for them, and for Tommy to have to deal with all of these issues and the fans staying away, and there's so many issues as well to deal with away from trying to be the football manager.
Yeah, listen, I don't envy Tommy. I'm hoping for a career in coaching and management myself, and you know, it's not an ideal first job, but I have to say he's handled it terrifically well, and you know, he's been brilliant with us as a group of players. It's been one of Tommy's strengths since he's come in. You know, his man management and his communication's been very good with us. As far as I'm aware, he's never been dishonest or lied to us, and that's one thing that I find very important in a manager anyway, and that's been the case with Tommy.
Yeah, and does, you know, a situation like this bring manager, staff and players closer together, because you know that it's not his fault that the money hasn't been paid. He's probably, and you know, he could have been one of the people also involved in waiting on money himself. I know the Bray staff were the same, and they opted to go on strike as such and, you know, train away from the club, which has caused issues. Whereas for you guys, when you have trained, you've trained with him, and you're fully aware that it's not his problem or it's not his fault that the money hasn't been there. Yeah,
I think with these sort of things, it can go one of two ways. You know, it can start to separate the group, and you might see little cliques develop and relationships go south. But it's been the opposite with us at the moment, and I think a lot of that comes from the leadership that we have with the likes of Tommy. Also, I can't stress enough the characters that we have in this group, whether it's young players, senior players. It's been really, really good, you know, and at no stage has players been coming in, I don't want to go in and train, or the atmosphere's been bad. It's been the opposite to that, in fact.
Yeah, home to Waterford this Friday, 7:45 in the Markets Field, and Waterford coming off the back of a defeat to Shamrock Rovers as well. They've not had European football to deal with, unlike the rest of the top five in the league. So what's your thoughts on that game and trying to pick up some points, obviously?
Yeah, listen, Waterford's always a difficult side to play, and I suppose after the result we got down there a few weeks ago, beating them 6-3 there, you know, a surprise result for everybody, no more so than ourselves, but you know, they'll be chomping at the bit to make amends from that, and we're expecting a tough game on Friday.
Yeah, 6-3, a 9-goal thriller, and some unbelievable goals in that game as well, and it just shows, I suppose, and I mentioned the gulf in the top of the league and towards the bottom of the league, but in the actual matches themselves, apart from a couple of heavy scores, we've spoken about the 6-0, you know, that you know, happened to Bray, and you guys had a couple of heavier defeats. If you play to your day, and on your day you can beat any of the teams, and you'd be hopeful to do that on Friday, as you did to them when you played them the last time.
Yeah, I think when you play against the sides at the top of the league, you have to be at your best or as close as possible, but sometimes that isn't even good enough to get results. Sometimes you need a little bit of luck as well, and we got both of that down in Waterford last time, so we'll be hoping for a repeat performance, and hopefully luck will be on our side again this Friday. We're due a bit, so. Yeah,
next two fixtures for Limerick after that, Bohs and Sligo, who were the two teams ahead of you in the league. You're 5 currently behind Sligo and 7 behind Bohs, so it's those type of games you need to be. If you lose to Waterford, you lose to Waterford. They're third in the league, they're going for Europe, but it's those other games. Bray, who you recently beat, of course, in you know, a game that was a huge win, and then if you can pick up points against the two above you, it just keeps you near them.
Yeah, I think the last round of games we drew against both Sligo away and against Bohs at home, and we should have won both games. We went into the last few minutes against Bohs again, 1-0 up, and conceded, I think, with 2 or 3 minutes to go, which on our part was naive and not good enough, and would have been a massive couple of points. But same went from Sligo away. I think the last 15 minutes they had a player sent off, and it was all us, and done everything but score towards the end of that game. And you know, if we can go into the next round of games, especially against those two sides, and again have a repeat performance of the last round of games, and you're hoping that we can get 6 points from those two games if possible. Yeah,
I love watching Limerick against Waterford, because both kits are made by Umbro and they're actually identical. Home versus away, they both wear very similar kits, and it's me being a football anorak, but that's just interesting to watch. And you know, if you can pick up a couple of wins, it'll give you a chance to avoid being in ninth and being in the playoffs. And we're going to speak in a moment about the First Division and how competitive that is and how fantastic the playoffs is for that league. Given that you're currently occupying ninth, and I know you've got a massive interest in kind of analysis and coaching, have you been keeping an eye on the First Division and maybe looking at, well, if we do finish ninth, we might play these or we might play them, and you know, have you been keeping any eye on that at all yet?
Yeah, I think because of the new structure, though, it's kind of hard to predict. You know, I think at this stage of the season, it's who finished the season strongly. It's that tight down there that, you know, if a team can go on a run now, you'd have to put them down as favourites. It's all about who comes into form at the right time.
Yes, and of course, finally, Eoin, you're still doing a bit of coaching when you can, when you're not in Limerick. Just talk to us about that and how it adds to you as a football player, because, you know, some football players love advice and love information, and, you know, love the manager giving them loads. Others are not so clever in terms of, you know, that sort of stuff and just want to play. But you've got a foot in both camps, and it's been an interesting part of you over the last year, particularly with your injury as well, when you did some you know, work as an analyst as well.
Yeah, no, I think again, going back again to the young boys that we have in our squad, there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of talent in the group that we have at Limerick. And if I can pass on a little bit of my knowledge that I've gained through experience as a player, through my coaching knowledge in that aspect, then that's what I'm hoping to do.
And it's something as well that I'm sure is a nice distraction from injury when you were injured, but also with the Limerick stuff with the money and also with the lack of wins. I'm sure it's a nice one to go and coach the kids, and just when you're coaching, nothing else in the world is probably in your head. Yeah,
listen, I think anybody that finds themselves coaching kids in particular, and I'm working with a group of 12-year-olds that don't have a care in the world, so sometimes it's great to go up to train and then have a laugh with them and obviously get down to business and be serious and get something out of the session. But it is a good distraction from any problems that you have in other aspects of your life.
Are they fans of your hairstyle?
They actually haven't seen it yet. So I'm going straight to the session tonight, so they'll see it tonight, so I'll let you know what they think.
Wearen, thank you so much for coming in. The best of luck with the coaching tonight, the rest of the season, the big game on Friday, and hopefully those wages arrive on Friday week and you can help Limerick stay up in the Premier. Thanks, Eoin.
Brilliant, Jamie, thank you.
You're on episode 24 of the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast. In a few minutes' time, we're going to focus as well and speak about Dundalk in Europe and also mention the St Pat Stadium issues and hear from the Derry City manager Kenny Shiels. But now it's time for all things First Division, and we've just gone from a man with a fantastic hairstyle and hairband in Eoin Wearen to a man who doesn't really need one of those. It's the former Galway and Wexford manager Shane Keegan, who is our First Division expert now on the podcast for the rest of the season. Shane, hello, how are you?
How are you getting on, Jamie? You love setting me up for hair jokes.
Yeah, you haven't gone for the hairband at the moment.
No, very, very little need for me to borrow that off Owen, is there?
Certainly not. Now, Shane, we've spoken to a couple of the clubs towards the bottom of the First Division, or the bottom of the Premier Division, so they said. Your team last season, Galway, relegated from the Premier League, trying to go for a comeback to the Premier the first time of asking. You left your job there a little while ago. Before we speak about the First Division, just tell me what an out-of-work League of Ireland manager does to fill his time, because you've not been sitting around doing nothing.
No, certainly not. No, plenty going on at the moment, Jamie. Probably out coaching about 5 nights a week at the moment for a couple of different clubs who contacted me over the last couple of weeks. So really enjoying that. Doing a small bit of a column for the Times online as well, which I've enjoyed doing a bit as well. So no, certainly no shortage of things going on to fill up the days.
Yes, now I have enjoyed so far your pieces in the Times. Just talk to me a little about the one you wrote about the different places and spots you've met players to convince them to sign, because it's not the lifestyle of Jose Mourinho, etc., where he's meeting them in a 5-star penthouse of a hotel in secret. You've met some players and discussed some deals and given people some interesting things to try and make them sign for your club.
Yeah, very true. Look, I suppose it's just the reality of the situation in the league, so it is. Certainly when I was down at Wexford, you ended up in some very, very interesting meetings. And even again, with Galway, you can, needs most, you're meeting fellas who have jobs. And, last year I would have met Gary Shannon, who probably had 10 minutes to give me before he went into work and lifestyle. And the only place we could find to sit down and grab a coffee was McDonald's, So you get some strange meeting places, that is for sure. But as I say, needs most, and once you get a fella signed, you don't care where you're meeting them, try and get the deal done.
# greatest league in the world. Will you sign for me here? By the way, I'll buy you a McFlurry as a bonus. That actually could have happened. Now, Shane, speaking of winning football matches, that's something that UCD have done a lot this season. We're going to focus on the First Division now and talk about the team at the top of the table. The manager, Collie O'Neill, helped his team beat your former team Galway 2-0 in the bowl on Friday, and he said afterwards that his team is motoring along like a train and that he didn't actually really need to be there, that he just feels they're in such a good place at the moment that they're just, able to play well, able to motivate themselves, and not too much need for a manager. And you may have been in the same situation when you were at Wexford and your team was promoted a couple of seasons ago, and once that winning momentum happens, he's probably making a very good point that the manager's not needed too much once the players are focused and able to go and continue to win matches.
That's definitely it, Jamie, because when I would have been going through a tough time with Galway, you'd been looking back and you'd be thinking, what was I doing at Wexford? What had us going so well at Wexford? And honestly, Collie's hit the nail on the head there. When we went on that run where we put together 5, 6, 7 wins kind of in a row almost, we were turning up a training and we were playing 5-a-sides. That is the truth of the matter. I don't think we ever put in as little tactical preparation. I don't know what it was. We just seemed to be on a roll. Lads were just really, really enjoying their football. You literally could turn up a training and just throw in a football and let them off at it. I think it's when you're struggling that you're kind of second guessing everything and trying to do more and more and more and more. Colley's in a fantastic situation now where whatever he's doing with them at the moment, it works, and he's just replicating that week on week. And look, I said a couple of weeks ago I found it hard to see them not winning it. That's certainly starting to look the case now. But fair play to him for playing his own role down at the same time, you know. Yeah,
Shane, in terms of the model that UCD is and has been over the years, they've always played a passing style of football. You know, they've always encouraged their players to express themselves, and that has shown. You know, the second goal that they scored the other night, Yo-Yo Maddy finishes it off, but fantastic combination play involving Neil Ferrugia and a couple of others, and you know, literally passing the ball into the goal after some fantastic one-touch play. And the players seem to be playing with no pressure, you know, able to enjoy their football as well, and that's something that, as young players, that I'm sure helps them winning the football matches.
Yeah, that's it. And I suppose the biggest compliment you can pay them there is, while the majority of the results have been very good, obviously they had that one against Longford a couple of weeks ago that came out of nowhere, and that was the real test for them. Providing they were able to bounce back from that result, they were always going to be the likely winners of the league, and they have bounced back from that fantastically. And I suppose the two players that you've mentioned have been huge additions to them in recent weeks, Yo-Yo Maddy and Neil Ferrugia. They're guys who didn't feature massively over the first half of the season and have kind of really stepped up now at this stage. And as I say, it's almost like two new signings, and look, they're flying. They really are flying. They've not won yet, and I think probably the most important thing for Colley is that they don't get overly carried away with themselves. But I'd be amazed if they don't kick on and do it from here.
Yeah, here's a question that the people in UCD won't be happy with me asking, but I do have to ask it because I had this discussion with someone last week. Is it good for UCD to go up if they go up first or if they go up via the playoffs? Because they've been in the first division now, it's their fourth season there. Of course, they had that fantastic Europa League campaign. Martin Russell got them up in 2009, kept them up for 5 seasons in a row. But since then, UCD, Shane, has changed a little bit in terms of they're going with a student-only scholarship model, and you know, every player that plays for them is in the college or possibly coming into the college. And if they come up to this 10-team league with a very young squad, will they keep Gary O'Neill? Will they keep Greg Sloggett? Will they keep, you know, their other top players? You don't want them coming up and you know, making things very hard for them. Are they better off competing at the top of the first division each week, or giving their young players a chance to really test themselves at the top level in the country?
Yeah, I get the point you're making, and knowing a lot of the squad and where they were at in terms of their academic studies, in truth, Jamie, ideally, from a playing perspective, they probably would have been best off going up last year if they could have managed it, because they had so many of them that weren't going to be finished college and were still going to be staying on. But I think the current team they have would have been well able to fight its own in the Premier Division. You've named a couple of fellas there. I think, you know, Colley himself would admit there are an awful lot of fellas in that current team that are very close to the end of their education in UCD, and that inevitably does mean that they end up going elsewhere. It's pretty much impossible for UCD to stop that happening. They'll admit that themselves. So, look, it's a brilliant side at the moment. You could be losing 4, 5, 6 players off of that side potentially next season, which would cause them huge problems. They're fantastic at replacing those players with young, hungry players who then become the next stars. But it is certainly better for those new players coming in to be learning their trade in the first division than it would be to potentially get walloped in the Premier, yeah. Yeah,
of course, and I'm not saying they would be walloped in the Premier, but if they do come up and they lose a couple of their key players, you know, they could find some games particularly difficult. And the other issue you might say is that their key players might decide to stay for another year and, you know, maybe work with the club on the summer camps and, you know, other things that they can maybe give them work on, coaching in local clubs, and maybe be guaranteed to play every week in the Premier League instead of taking a risk of going to a top team and maybe being a bit part player. So that's something for them to consider as well. But of course, we're talking if they go up, Shane, because they're not up just yet, and if they're going to, you know, hopefully from their point of view come up, draw the second in the table. They're 5 points behind UCD at the moment. Tim Clancy's done a great job as his first season as a manager with Kevin Doherty and Dave Robertson beside him. They're 4 clear of 5th, which is interesting, you know, so hopefully they'll at least make the playoffs. A young team, Shane, dotted with the experience of Paul Skinner, Sean Brennan scoring brilliant goals every time he scores, and they're hopeful of at least making playoffs. But if they can pick up a couple of wins and stay close to UCD, it'll keep them right in the hunt for automatic promotion, and they'll be, you know, getting back up to the Premier League for them.
Yeah, look, Tim is certainly running Colley close for manager of the year in that division, that's for sure. I mean, I suppose at the start of the year, the bookmakers who tend to know an awful lot about what's going on tend to write up odds based on budgets. And in fairness to Drogheda, I'd say they probably come in maybe in and around 5th, maybe in and around mid-table if it was based purely on budget. So clearly you're punching well above their weight at the moment. So that highlights the job that Kevin and Tim have done. They've done a really good job. they've got a lot of players in there who, I suppose every player should be give their all, and most players do, but particularly you just get that vibe about Drogheda that everybody's giving their every last ounce really for Tim at the moment. They're maybe a little bit threadbare in terms of squad depth, Jamie. I think they really, really need to keep all those main men fit. You know, if anything did happen to Sean Brennan, if anything happened to Chris Lyons, I think they've a couple of young boys at the back who've been absolutely fantastic in Conor Payne and Kieran Kelly. They need those guys fit. They do look like they're going to make the playoffs. They definitely need those guys fit in the playoffs. If they were to be missing 2 of those 4 in the playoffs, that'd be a serious blow to them, because they probably haven't got the strength and depth that some of the other sides have, you know.
Yeah, Sean Brennan scoring fantastic goals, and I was watching them against Shelburne a couple of weeks ago. He scored 90-minute free kick, top corner, and I happened to get the iPhone out just in time to make the video, and it got like 10,000 views. And Sean Brennan, his brother Killian and his brother Ryan and Gavin and them all retweeting him, and according to them, he's the best Brennan. So if he can be the best Brennan and help Drogheda get up, they'll be very, very happy with that. Now, Shane Keegan, Finn Harps and Ollie Horgan is a man who doesn't like to big his team up, let's just say. He actually doesn't really seem to give them a chance in any match, certainly publicly. In the media, he plays things down a lot and and whatever, but they're now third. They're in really, really good form. They've picked up 4 wins and a draw and a defeat in their last 6 matches. The only defeat in that period came against UCD. They've experience, of course, coming up through the playoffs before when they beat Limerick a couple of years ago, and 3 of their last 5 remaining games are at home, and they'll be hopeful to make the top 4 at the very least. But they've just, in recent weeks, done things quietly, but currently in a decent spot.
Yeah, look, Ollie will tell you they haven't a hope of making it, that's for sure. He'll also probably tell you that Paddy McCourt is ruled out for every game from now to the end of the season. But that's Ollie, and I think everybody in the league gets a kick out of Ollie and some of the comments he comes out with. Again, you know, really, really doing a brilliant chance. It's only a couple of weeks that they looked like they might struggle to get into it. Really, they'd dropped a couple of points off and had 1 or 2 poor results, but he's managed to do what Ollie does, which is pull 2 or 3 players out of absolutely nowhere. I don't know where he gets them from. Obviously, his background with the Irish schools tends to mean that he knows every young player coming through. But he's brought a foreign player in there in the last week or two, who appears to have had 2 excellent games as well. And he just seems to pull players out of nowhere. He's done great things with Mikey Bates. Since Mikey went in there, he's got quite a lot of goals for him. And he has an ability to spot a player. They've put themselves right in the picture. They've got a very tough one this weekend, Jamie. Like Cove away is always a really, really difficult one. If he can go down there and get 3 points, I won't say that secured him a playoff, but that would put him in a really, really strong position. But look, that'll be a test down there against Hendo and the lads, you know. Yeah, the results last weekend. Cabonteely beat Cove Ramblers by 2-0. It finished Drogheda at 2 at Lone Town 1. UCD, as you mentioned, beat Galway by 2-0. Harps and Shells drew 0-0 in Ballybuffet, while Longford Town had an excellent 3-0 win against Wexford FC on Saturday. Another fantastic passing goal from Longford, finished off by Dylan McGlade, who's in top form for them as well. The other teams involved in the race for that top 4, and how great are these playoffs for the how competitive the league is, Shane. Shells on 36 points, Longford on 35 points, your former team Galway on 32 points as well. As we mentioned, 5 games left. They're all still involved in this race. Of the other 3, if the top 3 do stay in the top 3, who do you see as the likely one, Shells, Longford or Galway, to make that final 4th spot? Look, it's it's next to near impossible to call. I really, really do think that you could have all 6 in contention heading into the final day of the season. I mean, that would be just brilliant. That really, really would be just ridiculous. So it would. But it really is very, very possible. I think Murph will take Galway to 3 points this weekend. That'll close up the small bit of a gap that's there and really, really get them on top of each other. And then you see a few of the other bigger sides are playing against each other. Look, I'd probably stick me neck out, and I do think Galway could still sneak that 4th spot. And if they do, I don't think any of the other sides will fancy playing against them in the playoffs. Shane, take that Galway t-shirt off. You don't work for them anymore. You're in the super dry gear now. Come on. No, look, there's a good group there. We, you know, as I've said before, I was disappointed to part company with them when I did, because I would have firmly believed that I would have still managed to sneak at least 4th spot myself. And look, Murph is doing a very, very good job since he's gone in there, and I think he could sneak that last one yet, and it would be very interesting to see what they can achieve then after that.
Shane, I'm putting a stop clock on you, 60 seconds. The keys to the last 5 games. Winning football matches is the obvious one, but how do those teams go and do that when the pressure, and all the managers say, oh, there's no pressure because we weren't expected to go up or this, that and the other, but if they're in a shout of getting in this top 4 with 3, 4, 2 games left, there will be a little bit on them. What are the keys for them for everybody to stay calm, managers and players alike, which you managed to do at Wexford to get your own team up a couple of years ago?
Yeah, look, I think UCD are going to go on and win it, and I think certainly mental strength and being able to handle the pressure are the key attributes then after that for who's going to get those playoff spots. That's why, as I've said, I think Ollie and Tim, they've got 2 really, really strong squads who seem to really, really buy into their manager and have a massive amount of self-belief in what they're doing. So I think they're definite. So I do. But yeah, that last one, it's going to be very, very interesting. That's for sure.
Shane Keegan, as always, thanks a million. We'll speak again between now and the end of the season. Cheers, Shane.
Cheers, Jay. See ya.
Yeah, the fixtures in the First Division this weekend. Athlone Town against UCD, 7:45 in the Athlone Town Stadium. It's Galway United against Cabinteely. That game is also at 8:15. Shelburne host Longford Town. I can't wait to be in Talca on Friday to watch that game. Both of those teams really do need to pick up points considering how close they are together in the league table, just outside that pack. Of course, we mentioned the top 3. Wexford against Strada, 8 o'clock, and one game on Saturday, as Shane mentioned. It's Cove Ramblers against Finn Harps in the First Division. Now, our final ports of call on episode 24 of the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast to discuss Dundalk in Europe, St Pat's Stadium plans, and also grab a quick word with Kenny Shiels. Firstly, Dundalk going into the Europa League second qualifying round this week. It's the first leg at home to Cypriot side AEK Larnaca. Dundalk, of course, beat Estonian side Levadia Tallinn 3-1 in aggregate. They won 1-0 away before a 2-1 win at Oriel Park, a game I was at last Thursday. Let's hear first from a man who scored a wonder goal in that game, Michael Duffy. At that time of the game, of course, Patrick Cuban had just put you 1-0 up. It's probably only a minute and a half or 2 minutes later. When Jamie chips that ball, what are you thinking?
I'm just thinking shoot straight away, like as soon as it comes over. We practice stuff like that in training, just carrying on at times, just like volleys and that. And as soon as I seen him chip it, like, that's the first thing I thought in my head. I'm shooting here if it comes to me, like. So I shot and thankfully it went straight in. Yeah,
I said in my pre-match preview that the attacking players with Dundalk, Patrick, yourself, Dylan, Jamie, Robbie Benson, Patrick McLennan, when he gets fit, are the keys, with the defence being so good, the keys to winning games, and that's proved to be the case in this round. But the goals that you've scored in both games have shown how good the attacking talent is in this team, and I know you work on it in training, but it must be an exciting team to play in, given the type of goals you're able to score like the one tonight.
It is. Like, I enjoy playing here. It's great. We're always attacking. We're always in the front foot, and even our first goal night was brilliant. Like, what a ball it was by Giano, and Pat's movement. He's done it all year. Like, it was a great header. And then obviously I'm buzzing to get another goal, the second one, but I've been enjoying it all season. We're always getting a lot of the ball in attacking areas. Like.
So you've scored the goal, it's hit the net, you go to celebrate. Tell me about that, because Oriel has packed 3,000 people in seats tonight because people can't stand, but the buzz of scoring a goal like that in front of your home fans in Europe is fantastic, I'm sure.
It was class, and like such a big game as well, like, and that second goal was huge for us, and the fans were brilliant tonight. Like, just packed out and they didn't stop singing the full night, and all the fans have been unreal. Like.
Just finally, your attention, I'm sure, will turn tomorrow to the next leg. The Sligo game will be called off, so it's AEK Larnaca from Cyprus in the next round here next week, and then away. Your thoughts on that one, and trying to hopefully fire your team through to the next round?
Like, that's going to be a tougher game again. Like, so we have a full week to prepare on it now. It's good the game's off on Sunday, so a full week to look at them and see how they play, and we'll just have to go and play our own game again. So we'll be looking forward to that now. Patrick
Cuban scored the opening goal in that game. Great cross by Sean Gannon, and manager Stephen Kenny was quick to highlight the importance of not just his attacking players but his defensive midfielder Chris Shiels, who had a brilliant performance as well. I want to talk about Chris Shiels. Your attacking players are fantastic. Your back four, is very, very solid, and young Dan Cleary's come in and done great. Goalkeeper Gary Rogers, but Chris Shiels seems to always be there when you're playing out from the back. He's much better with the ball than people give him credit for, and when you don't have the ball, breaks things up, makes tackles, makes fouls. He's a very, very important player, particularly with the fact that Stevie O'Donnell's out as well.
I thought Chris Shiels was overall the outstanding player in the park tonight, and I've been hard on him over the years. He knows that, because to get up to the technical standard, because he's always had the work rate and the tackling, but his passing is terrific. It's just come on so good. This is the best period of his career, in my view. By his current run of form, it's been phenomenal, and. He was outstanding. He covered the back four's mistakes tonight. He covered incredible ground to get one or two of them out of jail. And in the midfield, he he did incredible work, and you know, delighted.
Feel free to grab your cup of tea if you want. I know it's getting cold there. I was just going to say to you, do you have a chance to relax and unwind? But I came in, we were in your office here, and your assistant Vinnie Perth and Rory Higgins, your scout as such, already looking at stuff on the laptop for the next team you're going to play from Cyprus, AEK Larnaca. So straight away your focus is on next Thursday. You don't even get a minute to have a glass of wine or chill out. It's straight on to next week.
No, we're in the morning, and we've organised a bounce game for the players who didn't play tomorrow evening, you know, just to behind closed doors, and we want you know, the players that aren't playing to be match fit, and I think you know, you know, that was a real test for us tonight. The squad is going to be tested now, because the players are exhausted after that, because that was a tough workout tonight. And yeah, I think, listen, we're planning for Larnaca from 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Rory Higgins was in Poland last weekend watching Larnaca and AK Athens in a training camp. You know, we had to get 2 planes on a long train journey to go to some obscure training camp to watch you know, a friendly game. So we know the Cypriot Cup holders in the league. They're Applewell have been in the Champions League, and they won the cup over them, and they've qualified through the league as well. They have you know, a Spanish coach, and a lot of players have played in the Liga. Very experienced team, and so it'll be a tough game, but we, you know, we don't feel inferior to anybody, and I don't think we will next Thursday. This is our home ground, and we want a good performance, and we're you know, we're looking forward to it already. We'll make sure we prepare well. Probably overall performance tonight mightn't be good enough. We need to be better than overall. Some players weren't at their best tonight and can improve, and I think so. We'll get ourselves ready.
Just over 3,000 fans packed into Oriel Park last Thursday. It'll be the same this Thursday for that game, of course. As I mentioned, against AK Larnaca, they can only fit in 3,000 because of the legal requirements in terms of every spectator has to have a seat. They don't all sit, but they certainly have to have a seat as well. And the goalkeeper, who has been in great form this season, his name is Gary Rogers. He says that the players never get bored of the electric European atmosphere. You've obviously played a huge number of European games now. Not all the European games though have been here, and to have it in Oriel Park, there was 3,000 seats here because of you can't have people standing, but the place really was rocking, and it must be a great place to play as a footballer for Dundalk. Even though you've done it a lot, it's still, I'm sure, a real buzz to play in them.
Yeah, European nights are always special. I think, you know, it's the one major advantage that League of Ireland players have, you know, as opposed to playing League 1 or 2 in England. You know, you don't get to play in Europe and test yourself against European opposition that often, and it's great for, you know, the fans to come out and see, you know, teams from other countries playing. And, you know, as a League of Ireland player, it's always a special night to go out and play, and if you can go out and win a game as well, it makes it that little bit more special. So look, we've got more European football to look forward to next week, and we're grateful for that, and hopefully we'll put in some good performances again here. Yeah, so Dundalk drew 3-1 in aggregate tonight. This night, next week, they're going to be back here in the Europa League, second qualifying round, first leg against AEK Larnaca from Cyprus. I know they have some scouts here tonight, Gary, and your thoughts on that game. I know you're only, you know, half an hour after the first round, but your attention straight away will be on that game because your next league game will be called off, of course. Yeah, the Sligo game will be called off, so we'll have a week, you know, to prepare and really fully focus on them. We have, you know, obviously seen some of the footage and stuff of them playing, and we've seen them play against Cork last year, so we know they're a streetwise team, and you know, they good performance last year when they were out of season to put Cork out as well. So, you know, it'll be difficult opposition, but it's in by no means opposition that we're not capable of beating. So look, we'll approach the games the same way we have for the last 2 games, and hopefully, you know, if we can play to our potential, we'll be good enough to progress. I know some of the fans were shouting behind the press box going, we're making the group stages again. I know there's 6 games left to make that step, but all you can do is get through to round 2 and keep the hope, I suppose, the possibility of getting as far as you can this competition again. Yeah, I think, you know, that's, you know, it's a very difficult task, you know, to go and win 4 rounds of Europe. I don't think any Irish team has ever done it, and that's not to say that that's not our aim, but it is very difficult to do. But you have to take one round at a time, and, you know, we'll be fully focused on Larnaca for the next round and see where that takes us. Look, it's certainly, you know, an ambition that we would like to get back to the group stages, but we're well aware of how difficult it is, and, you know, it'll be a tough test.
So what do we know about AEK Larnaca? Well, they're from Cyprus. They won the Cypriot Cup last May. They haven't played a competitive match since the 16th of May. Their captain and a number of key players have not travelled to Dublin and to Dundalk for this match. They're bringing a 17-man squad. They have, though, got 3 senior internationals in that squad, 2 Macedonians and 1 from Australia, and 6 players who've played in La Liga in Spain. They eliminated Cork City last year thanks to 1-0 wins in both legs. They have a new manager as well, and they were knocked out of the Europa League qualifiers in the playoff round last season. So yeah, it'll be a much harder test for Dundalk than they got against the Estonians last week. But that game kicks off at Oriel Park at 7:45, and the very best of luck to Stephen Kenny and his team. Now, huge disappointment for St Patrick's Athletic and their plans to build a 12,000-seater Richmond Arena stadium on top of the Inchicore town centre, with shops, restaurants, cinemas, banks, coffee shops, parking and loads more, along with up to 500 houses for both social housing and private housing as well, on the St Michael's estate in Inchicore. The site of their current home at Richmond Park would have been the plan to put some houses on that site as well. But the Housing Minister, Eoin Murphy, revealed plans to build 470 homes at Emmett Road, which will form part of Ireland's first cost rental development. That those plans do not include anything on the scale of St Pat's plans in terms of community facilities, and that has been their main issue. And off the balls, Darren Cleary has been speaking to a disappointed St Pat's president, Tom O'Mahony, but he hasn't given up hope just yet.
What they said at the launch this morning was that, to get into a situation with us would involve, and I mean, I can understand this to some extent, that, they're ready to roll now with what they have, whereas if they want to change course and go with us, they've got to sit down and do a lot of negotiation and sorting out things, and that's a risk of delay, and they don't really want to do that when there is such a pressing housing need. And everybody can understand that, but what our counter-argument to that, I suppose, would be the site has been vacant for a decade, and, possibly taking a few months longer in order to get a much better solution might be worth doing.
When you mention negotiations, I understand there's limits to what you can tell us, but what would that entail? Where would the talks centre? Is it kind of on the ownership of the land? Because obviously it will be council-owned land, which will be given to a private developer, Gareth and his partners, to develop this. Is it a case of finding out who then owns the retail units?
No, it actually wouldn't. It would be a land swap, you see. What we would do is we would swap Richmond Park for an equivalent amount of space on the site.
Okay.
So the council would still have the same amount of land. So but now they would be able to develop houses on both sites. And with the part, so what we would effectively be doing is moving the footprint of Richmond Park across onto part of this site, and we would build the new Richmond Arena. So, but that's where you would have all your retail and your town centre and everything like that. So the negotiations would be around the commercial deal involved in that and so on. But there's a more fundamental point, and this is the alarming bit. What the council said to us was they don't actually believe that there should be big retail facilities on St Michael's estate, because they believe that will take away from the town, the village of Inchicore. But anybody who knows Inchicore well knows that the village of Inchicore is barren in terms of retail. It doesn't work for retail, and businesses have been deserting the area. There's no car parking, whereas we were offering a town centre with 350 underground car parking spaces. So there's a pretty fundamental disagreement on first principles in relation to what Inchicore needs. We believe Inchicore, to have any hope of regeneration, needs a proper town centre with proper facilities, and the City Council apparently don't share our view.
So what kind of civic amenities, if any, did they have in their proposal this morning that you noted?
They're talking about extending an existing community centre that's there, that there would be a playing area for kids. Now, I want to be fair to them. They were talking about building a new library out the front, but anything that they were talking about, we had built into our plans. Yeah,
you had a library, if I remember correctly, and a theatre and a couple of other...
We had a cinema, we had a small theatre. We had far more. The other thing in their plans, they're saying that these things will be in phase 3. I don't know what that means. I don't know whether it means that they said they would build the houses first and then add other things on later on. In our case, everything was going to be done at the same time.
When you take a ramble through Inchicore, and I remember when you unveiled your stadium plans, we went up there and we spoke to you in Richmond Park.
Yeah.
And just even walking around the place, I mean, you've got a lot of fast food outlets, you've got a lot of bookmakers. I think there's one shop, I didn't pass an ATM, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of places you could go for a cup of coffee. It seems to be sorely lacking any kind of amenities. Do you think that there's a serious risk of, without trying to be a little bit alarmist, creating ghettos if you just build houses with nothing for people to do?
Our argument is that you can't regenerate Inchicore if you don't put the type of modern facilities in that they have. They have them in Tara, they have them in Blanchardstown, they have them everywhere else. A proper town centre that people can go in, have a cup of coffee, do their shopping, park the car and do the shopping. People that want to do a big supermarket shop in Inchicore have to drive several miles out of the area because there's nothing in the area. So, we had the solution to all of this, and it would be an awful shame. I think if we end up going a different way and this doesn't happen. Even leaving the stadium out of it would be an awful shame. But obviously, speaking with the St. Pat's hat on, the stadium was always going to be the icing on the cake on this. It would be absolutely brilliant if we got it.
And finally, Tom, where do you go from here? I know there will be a public consultation process. You will have a chance to raise your concerns. You can perhaps tailor your proposal a little bit differently if they so request. So what's your next step?
Our next step is to engage with the council if they will engage with us. I don't know whether they will or won't, because what they were essentially saying this morning was that St. Pat's proposal was now off the table. And that may or may not be the case. But there's still the court of public opinion in all of this. And the councillors ultimately have to vote one way or the other on this. And, if the people who live in the area express very strong views to the councillors, I think the councillors will take those into account. So I think there's still a lot to play for, Darren, but we will just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we have more on this St. Pat's story on the That's What I Call Sport on Dublin's 98 FM with myself, which is on Sunday morning between 9am and 10am. Very finally, an interesting week for Derry City. They lost 2-0 to Dinamo Minsk at home in the first leg of the Europa League, first qualifying round, first leg qualifier a couple of weeks ago. Just over 1,000 fans turned up to that game because Derry had increased the ticket prices. That really backfired for them. They went to Belarus against all odds and won 2-1, losing 3-2 in aggregate, so nearly got through to the second round, which would have been a fantastic result for them overall. They then had to fly home and travel to play Cork City on Monday night. Hammered 5-0 in what a couple of Cork players have described as their best performance of the season. The manager, Kenny Shiels, afterwards says it was cruelty to his players to make them play in Europe, in Belarus on a Thursday, and then go to Cork a couple of days later. A full version of his interview you'll find in the audio podcast on offtheball.com. But here's part of our chat on his claims about cruelty to his players.
By the time we were finished the trip, it didn't really finish in reality until we got back yesterday morning from Cork, and it didn't really get a chance to feel good about doing so well, because the trip lasted for a full week, and we're not like Cork, and these teams can just charter a flight to where they're going. We need to get 3 and 4 flights, and we have to get our base to depart from. The best base is Dublin Airport, so we've got 3.5 hours down, 3.5 hours up. So we've 7 hours added onto our journey. And it was quite demanding on the players, and they were absolutely out on their feet after the game lit Thursday night against Minsk. And then they looked really, really tired coming down that trip all the way down to Cork, the 7 hours down to Cork. So it was like 14 hours and 21 hours in total. It was 21 hours in the bus for that little period, and it was way too demanding.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask Kenny, and you mentioned in your post-match after the 5-0 defeat against Cork that you felt it was cruel on your players. Just explain to me the timeline of after the match on Thursday night in Minsk to getting home, to getting to Cork, how that worked.
Yeah, that was tough because we had to go to Germany first on the way back in the early hours of Friday morning, and then we stopped in Frankfurt for 3 hours, and then we travelled on down to Dublin, and then the big bus ride all the way back up to Derry. It was like I got in on Saturday morning from the trip, and it was quite demanding. My chairman's a traveller, he travels all the time, and he was even tired. But, people feel that you're making excuses, but it's not. There are well-established reasons. The game should never have been played. The game should never have been arranged. The weekend of Europe, and Cork would have beaten us, I'm sure, anyway, because they usually do. But we wanted to make a fist of it and try to compete against them. but everything was made difficult for us, and they had the audacity to say, "Oh, we'll change it from Sunday to Monday." Imagine that. That was really big of them. And it was so, I'm not being facetious, but it was like, I don't know where it was done with sarcasm or what, but, you know, it was like, the game shouldn't have been played. And I never realised the trip would have been so long for us. But, you know, hey ho, we have to go. And it's easy for me to try and make excuses for the players. I don't like doing that, but they were on their knees, to be honest. And I thought we'd really cracked it with coming into the game really strong, and then they just couldn't. They ran out of gas so early.
Interesting stuff there from the Derry City manager Kenny Shiels. That full audio version of the interview is in the podcast section of offtheball.com right now. Finally, the fixtures in the Premier League this weekend. Bray Wanderers, Cork City, 7:45 in the Carlisle ground. It's Derry City against St. Pat's, a big game for both of those clubs up there in the Brandy, but at the same time, Limerick v Waterford, which we spoke about to Eoin Wearen earlier on, that's at 8:15. Well, 8 o'clock in Dublin, it's Shamrock Rovers against Sligo. One game taking place on Sunday. I'll be up in Oriel Park to watch Dundalk against Bohs. That game kicks off at 7 o'clock. Final mention on this week's podcast for a young man called Andy Lyons, who is the nephew of the late great Johnny Lyons. He was our sports editor in 98 FM for years and years and years, and presented in That's What I Call Sport. And he's the man who told us that we could do a League of Ireland podcast. So yeah, anyway, unfortunately Johnny died 3 years ago, very sadly. We all miss him and love him a lot. But Andy, who's only 17, made his first start for Bohs on Friday in that 6-0 win against Bray. He hit the crossbar and also won a penalty, and he was absolutely brilliant. The captain, Derek Pender, is suspended, and Andy could start against Dundalk on Sunday as well. So well done to Andy, his dad, Morris, his mum, his brother Ken and his sister Heidi and all were at the game as well. So yeah, and then he wasn't very impressed when Soccer Republic came on Monday, and his shot against the crossbar and also his winning of the penalty were credited to Dan Casey, who's a huge big centre-back wearing a different number. So yeah, not impressed with Soccer Republic. So well done, Andy. Keep it up. That's it for episode 24 of the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We're back next Wednesday, folks, and thanks to everybody behind the scenes at Niall McGrath and more. We'll chat to you next week. See you. Bye-bye.